All right, welcome into another episode of the Render Podcast. I am so excited to be here with one of the people on my team, Anna Beth.
Hi.
We call her ABB or AB or Anna Beth, all the things.
That's so many nicknames.
So many nicknames. She is a floral guru around these parts.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I was raised in a household where there were flowers everywhere all the time. Both my parents were gardeners. My mom was president of the garden club in our town.
President of the garden club.
She was president of the garden club, which actually it had a lot of there were competitions for arrangements as well. It wasn't just gardening.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up here. Mom was president of the Dallas Garden Club. And whatever that entails. It was a great early exposure to a lot of different kinds of floral. And when I went off to college, she also started doing floral for a vendor south of Austin. And so I would help her in the summers. And so, yeah, I've been around flowers my whole life. Started a company in 2012 that I actually closed yesterday, which is really exciting because
it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
No, it was a total success. I'm really proud of what I accomplished with Bonnie Blooms. I'm so proud of some of the work that I did, and I'm so excited to be working more with you, and I'm in school now, and so it was just a good time to kind of caveat, but we'll get more into that later about the difference between floral design and being a business owner.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. So you've been doing floral really your whole life.
Yeah.
You've been doing floral officially for events starting in 2012.
Mm-hmm. And before that, I freelanced.
Okay.
Yeah, I freelanced for several big places around town, and got a lot of hands-on knowledge just about the background stuff you don't see, processing, ordering, and how to process a rose versus a calla lily and stuff like that.
Well, you think most things that show up, like whether it's at an event or a wedding or your house, you don't think about what it took to get it to that arrangement. And so I think starting this conversation around how do we figure out even what that process looks like. I mean, you and I both freelance under a couple other florists before we started our own businesses doing floral. I know that we've listened to podcasts, we've done conferences, we've done online courses, we've done all this education when it comes to floral, because it's not only just the prettiness that you see. Like most people think about, it's not just the pretty arrangements.
No.
It's so much more than that. And not only the arrangement, but how do you make it last a while instead of killing it right away?
Yeah, it's very easy to kill flowers, especially in hot climates.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think back to that event with LinkedIn we had, that some of those arrangements had to last 5 or 6 days.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Instead of just the one day for a wedding. And so there's so much education that goes into even doing flowers in the first place.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I feel like you're growing up with having a gardening mom and dad maybe helped influence you on that and helped you kind of understand that before even freelancing.
That's a great point. I've never really considered how, my early exposure to florals and gardening and thinking about flowers in terms of growing them and how to make them last longer. I never really thought about that until now, but that's probably a really good point. I've also freelanced for places that specialize in delivery, and that is a whole different training altogether than events, and that's where you learn a lot about longevity as well.
Right. I mean, there's a difference between an arrangement sitting on someone's counter for a week or 2 weeks versus being just on a dining table for one event, for one evening that lasts 4 or 5 hours.
Exactly. It's hours versus, like you said, hopefully weeks. People are going to get their money's worth. Is there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah. I was just over at my mom's house last night, and do you remember that event you did 2 Fridays ago, the Texas Tux fundraiser?
Yes.
She
what
still
2 Fridays ago?
Yes, it did. But she still has the flower arrangement on her counter.
Does she really?
And it doesn't look terrible. It's been a week and a half, almost 2 weeks.
That's great.
But it still is kicking. It's still working.
That's wonderful. Well, we got some really wonderful produce for that round. And everything looks, that's a wonderful thing about spring,
Exactly.
Everything looked great.
And the weather cooperates.
It did. I know. It's been so nice here. It's been cooler.
I love that.
Flowers like cold. Side note, flowers like cold.
They do. Yeah, I feel like you definitely have to have a cooler if you're in a warmer climate. I remember going up to Seattle, Washington. I took a in-person conference with Sinclair and Moore with Steve Moore. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. I think I've talked about him a couple times.
Yeah, I think we've talked about him between each other.
Yeah. So he does very luxury, very high-scale events. Mainly weddings, and I had gone up there and I had a friend up there that I had taken an online course with in a different floral course. And up in Seattle, her workshop was in her garage carport. She didn't even have a garage. It was in her carport. She didn't have a cooler. She didn't have like climate regulated area because she was in Seattle.
So she didn't need it. That's
she didn't
flowers
need it.
Thrive.
Yes. So when I went to visit her and we went by her house and she was like, this is where I do my flowers. I'm like, this is where you do your flowers? This is where you do your flowers? You don't have, I was like, where's your big walk-in cooler?
Right?
She's like, I don't have a walk-in cooler. I was like, what? She had a mini fridge, and that was for her personal flowers. So like the boutonnieres, bouquet, she had a mini fridge.
Sure, so anything that wasn't going to be able to be in water.
Right, exactly. But she's like, I don't need a cooler. And I'm like, here in Texas, you can't have a floral business and not have a walk-in cooler or really even like the doored coolers.
You have to have some kind of way to climate control your flowers. If you're going to work in the South anywhere.
Right.
I would say, or a desertous climate because they don't like to dry out.
Right. Yeah. It's just so interesting seeing different areas of the country and the world and like how they actually do that.
Right.
It was so interesting.
But here we got the coolers.
We have to have the coolers.
We have to have the coolers.
Or it will all be shriveled up and gone.
Yep.
In a matter of seconds. So we both had some formal training, whether it was formal or informal. We still had some training before we got into doing it as a business or doing it really more full time in general. How important would you say it was to your floral knowledge in the way that you do things to have that training?
It's hugely essential. So something we were talking about before the podcast started, and I think is really true, is that you can sign up for floral classes in like your local community college or places like that, but it's not going to give you the training you need. What you really need to do is be willing to be a gopher and kind of a grunt person for, florists you really admire who do work that you think is cool. There's so many ways of doing flowers. So I know that you worked with some people in town who are just super talented and wonderful. And I bopped around several different places and just learned, again, mechanics, and you learn different styles of doing things. And the thing about
I learned how to process differently too. The way that I learned to process roses was with a knife. And you knifed it. Remember how I used to knife it all?
Right. That's right.
And then you came in and you were like, where's the floral strippers?
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean a floral stripper?
Knife takes
and
so long.
A floral stripper, not
a stripper.
The other kind of stripper.
It's a little gizmo that saves your hands.
Yes. But it's just interesting the way that we both learned in the same city from different florists. And there's like 5 different ways, I feel like, to process a rose.
Oh my gosh. Every time I freelanced for a different florist, I really enjoy the little personals and bouquets and boutonnieres and things. So I was always the boutonniere girl. But everybody had a different way of doing it. So I always had to get retrained and, okay, how do you like to tie your boutonnieres? How do you like to do this? Yeah. So I would say, if you're interested in being a florist and a floral designer, be willing to start at the very bottom. Be willing to carry heavy buckets, wash buckets. No one's too proud to wash buckets around here, which is nice.
We've all, I think everyone on the team has washed buckets.
Yeah. We can we're going to have to get into that because there are a lot of things about floristry that you wouldn't think about, like having to bleach. You have to bleach out your buckets because otherwise bacteria will grow in between your events and that will kill your flowers as well. So bleaching buckets is it's not a fun job, but it's absolutely essential to running.
Y'all should see Anna Beth's Vans. Her shoes. They used to be black.
And now they're
not
just
anymore.
Splotchy orange. You know how black fades to orange?
It's like that orangey, pinky.
I need to get galoshes. I need
Well,
to
you
get
should
galoshes.
just keep those until just for washing buckets.
They kind of are my bucket washing shoes now.
Yeah. But it's so important, and you don't know that just from seeing flour at the grocery store, just seeing flour show up at your door or at an event.
Yeah.
You don't think about the backside of that.
So I would say if anybody wants to be a florist, you've got to be willing to do work like that and continue to be willing to do work like that for the rest of your career. Right. Sometimes if occasion calls, and yeah, just find people in your town, in your city whose work you really admire, and just say, hey, if you ever just need someone and you can pay me minimum wage. Because
we all are looking for freelancers.
Good freelancers and good ones are so wonderful, and a freelance fit. And there are some wonderful freelancers who might just not be a fit for your company, but freelancers who really can understand your style and kind of take a ball and run with it.
Yeah. Well, even just anyone who can help you wash the buckets or fill the buckets and put the floral in there or sweep the floors for you. Things like those that, when you see the floral on your counter, you see the floral there, you don't think about picking it up from the wholesaler
in boxes
to then fill up 20 buckets full of water, which hurts your back.
Very heavy.
And then putting those in the water, taking the floral, cutting them, stripping the leaves off of them, putting them in the water. But then you have all this stuff to clean up. You don't think about how hard that is on your back. I think most people who get into floral, they're like, oh, it's all so pretty.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait to work with my hands and be so fun with it. Well, there's a lot of nitty-gritty work that goes behind it.
So many misconceptions as to what it actually is like to be a florist. And it's so hard on your back. It's hard on your hands too.
Yeah.
A lot of, and I need to get into this, a lot of florists wear gloves or they get their nails done like you do, because it just, all those chemicals, like the floral food and the bleach you use, it just shreds your hands up.
Yeah. I have to get acrylic nails because if I use anything else, my nails break.
Yep.
And it's so hard.
Yeah. I know there's a gal who is a head floral designer for a big wedding shop here, and she never misses her acrylics appointment because she uses them as a floral tool.
I plenty of times have taken my nail and clipped the end of one just because you can.
And floral foam, if you have to use it, gets under, and just the gunk of floral gets under nails, and it I've got a little scrubber brush at home. Yeah. And it still looks bad for 2 or 3 days.
Right.
After, so those are the kinds of things that you don't think about. And back when I was doing weddings for myself a lot, I would have brides say, well, maybe I can do some of these myself. And I'd say, do you want your hands to look pretty for the ring shop?
Right.
Because I don't think you
do. You want green nail beds?
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
So I would say be willing to do that kind of work is hugely important. And find people you like and just be good to them. Yeah. Be reliable.
And even those who are listening who have a rental or have a floral business or have something that they are running, you don't necessarily need a floral designer to come and help you with those buckets or come and help clean up afterwards. Go to your local college or local high school and see if you can get some of those people who go to the high school or college, and have them come in and help you and just pay the minimum wage or a little bit better than minimum wage, and just help you with those things. Because not only the time that you are standing there designing, which takes time, it takes effort, and it's hard on your back, but having to clean it all up afterwards, not that that's a terrible thing to do, but it could save you one, time, and two, just the wear and tear on your body.
Absolutely. Having a second person, and depending on the size of the event that you're doing, I would say anything more than 10 to 15 arrangements at a time, it's absolutely essential, I would say, to have someone to help you clean and to help and just help carry, and because there's just so much.
There is.
And loading in and transport is a whole
other ball game.
Yeah, and it's hard on your body too.
Yeah.
It's cramming in little elevators and lots of trips, and it's a full body workout.
It really is. I feel like the days that I'm doing a lot of floral, I miss my workouts.
Yeah.
Because it is a workout.
You don't need it. Yeah,
Right.
you really don't need it after you've squatted to the ground, grabbing heavy buckets and lifting them,
Yeah, you're working different muscles, that's for sure.
It's literally like big time reps at the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
Lifting those gallon buckets.
Right. Well, let's talk for a minute between the difference of a floral designer and a floral business. Because there's a big difference between the two. And you have firsthand experience in that.
I do. And I love your take on business because, I mean, the reason we work together so well is because I started Bonnie Blooms in 2012 with the idea that I had a vision and I was curious about that part of the industry. I wanted to take ownership of what I was doing and take ownership of my own design eye and create my own style, my own aesthetic. And I didn't really sit down and make a formal business plan, which I should have done, but I just wanted to do the work,
Right.
And I thought I had something to bring to the table, and I did, and I do. But yeah, being a floral designer is a hugely different thing from being a floral business owner, because when you're a designer, you definitely think about logistics, you think about seasonality, you think about forming relationships with the back end people, the wholesalers, the freelancers you work with. You work really different hours. And to be a business owner, you are meeting the clients and you are creating the front end budgets that the clients will see, and you're educating them on cost. And it really is two hugely different roles. And I got tired of being a business owner, and you thrive being a business owner, and you're so good at it. And I know that you made a conscious decision to branch out into doing floral when you already had a successful rental business. How did you make that choice to go into fresh flowers when everything else was like going great guns with the furniture and everything?
Yeah, of course. So most of the people who've listened to the podcast for a while, you know that we started as an event planning firm. We did weddings, corporate events, and did the coordinating side of things. Well, we had at that point, when we decided to go from doing event planning to rentals, we had so many clients just saying, I have all this stuff, and so I don't need it anymore. This is back in the day of DIY, the burlap runners and
my gosh.
lace
Mason jars.
Mason jars, all the things. And they were like, I've now got 50 of these things. I don't need them all. Do you want them? And I was like, sure. We've got plenty of other people getting married who wants this exact same thing.
Yes.
And so I started renting those out over and over and over again. And I fell in love with the rental side of things. I fell in love with the actual product that made the event so beautiful.
Yes.
And so opened up beautiful event rentals at the time. And probably 6 or 7 years into that, we had our corporate events. So we were doing almost 100% just weddings. And in 2017, 18, we made the transition from doing about 100% weddings to doing like 60 to 80% corporate events, and then the rest being weddings. And we had a lot of corporate clients that said, hey, we're looking for a florist, but most people who do floral here in DFW only do wedding flowers. And so we want some sort of an option that isn't wedding flowers. We don't have to worry about it showing up like a wedding. And so we said, you know what, we can start renting out plants, and we can start buying plants and hosting them here and renting them out to people. And then we eventually got asked, hey, can you make some centerpieces that look more masculine and more manly? And so we said, well, sure, let's try it out and see what happens. And we just kept getting more inquiries over and over and over about it. And so at that time, before we kind of made that transition, I started freelancing for a few people here locally who maybe were a little bit more on that aesthetic and less wedding, but still did a ton of wedding. And then I took an online course. I went to Seattle to take that in-person conference. And so made the decision to transfer into doing floral and rentals to really pull together the entire design of the event, instead of having a rental company here and a floral company there and another rental company there and all of that. And so we wanted to kind of create this space where people could do both things with us.
That's so brilliant. I will say, as someone who works for you, it's so wonderful when Render does both all the tableware and such, and tables and chairs and all of that load in, because I know that the team there, I know that what I'm setting things on. I've interacted with it.
Right.
I know how it works. I know how it functions.
Right.
And so
just on the other side of that door is all of our
yes,
stuff.
all
So
the
you
stuff.
know.
I can see it right now. So yeah, it's really, really wonderful having that full experience coming from one company, not only I think probably for a client, especially a corporate client, because, a one-stop fits all kind of thing, but also for the people who do work in the back room and are setting up and, having that team experience with everything it just makes everything run so much more smoothly on the day of.
Very true. Lots of logistics all in one house.
Yep. And we get to talk to each other.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We can say, hey, how big is that table? How big do we need to make it?
Yeah. And is it waterproof?
Right.
Or is it,
right.
Yeah.
You know what's going to be at the event versus coming in blindly.
And that's a big problem, I would say, for floral designers, especially doing events.
Yeah.
Or surprises with stuff like that.
Right. Which sometimes as a florist, you have to kind of preemptively think, okay, this floral that I'm putting on a huppa, what is the huppa? Like, what is it made out of? What are the mechanics on that? How I'm going to attach it? And just having that all in one house, we know what it looks like. We can even do prototypes. So we can even look at it as we're designing it versus going in blindly.
Yeah.
And not knowing.
And I would say anybody who wants to be a floral designer, start really thinking about that kind of thing, because it isn't just working with the flowers. It is big. It's a lot of problem solving, honestly.
And I would say the prep for your floral is just as important as the actual floral that you're designing.
100%.
Whether it's an arrangement and the mechanics that are within the arrangement to hold the flowers in place, or whether it is floral going on a huppa, or whether it's a 6-foot garland that we designed last week.
Yeah.
Kind of need to know the mechanics and how is that actually going to happen versus just grabbing some flowers and poking them into wherever they go.
Yeah.
There's more that comes with that.
Absolutely. And being able to prep things to be safely transported, I would say, is also, back logistics are a huge part of being a florist.
Yeah. Definitely.
Thinking through not just the design, but the practicality, the movement, the longevity of the floral you've got, depending on if you're going to be, it's going to be outside, is it going to be inside, things like that. Just
also, what's the weather going to be like? We know that hydrangeas cannot survive here in Texas in 100 degrees.
They do not like heat. They do not want to be outside in heat. Yeah. Even an hour, they start to just say nope, and there's no getting them back. Right.
Exactly. Once they wilt, they wilt.
Yep. They're once you get them too far gone, there's no bringing them back. So yeah, I mean, to be a good floral designer, you have to kind of have an understanding of the character of the flowers you want to work with. You don't need to know about every flower in the world, but the flowers that are important to you and the ones that you like working with and the ones that get you the aesthetic you want, understand how they behave. Right. And understand how they behave from season to season.
Right. Right. Yeah, there was, I think back to one of the LinkedIn events where we had to work with hydrangeas. And if you remember that day in September, it was about 90, 95 degrees.
Oh my gosh, those sweet people from the Bay Area did not know what Texas was like in September.
They did not know.
That farm was so uncomfortable.
But you think about, the hydrangeas that we had to work with for those arches, it was 95 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
The arches were in direct sunlight in 95-degree weather. And we didn't realize that until we showed up. And so thank goodness we brought those, do you remember those heavy, very heavy buckets of water that we had placed around?
Yes.
And we were dunking the hydrangeas in the water buckets to then place them in the overly watered foam.
Oh my gosh, there was water everywhere.
There was water
everywhere. So that they survived. Do you remember how dirty we got?
So dirty. I mean, the sweat and the dirt.
We could, run a line down our arms and it would be a different color.
Yeah, it was super fun.
But that is what you have to do sometimes.
Yeah, well, and you have to prep for that. Not only thinking about where you're going and the venue that you're setting up in, but what the weather looks like, how you're going to get it there, how you're going to transport it from your van or your vehicle up to the, 100th floor or down on the street level. You have to kind of know what those things are happening it doesn't just show up and look pretty.
It does not. I mean, it does for your client, and that is the hope.
Right.
The hope is that they don't know, right? When I was doing weddings by myself and interacting with clients a lot more, I would say the goal here is for you to barely even register me. I will hand you your bouquet, and hopefully you'll be thrilled. And I will then be scurrying around, and then you'll walk into your reception, and it's going to be beautiful and set, and then you're going to leave for your honeymoon, and you never have to think about it again, and it's going to be there, and then it's going to go away, you know. But the little elves, you know, who make it there and go away, get dirty, and have to deal with. I feel like any city you're in, if you want to do event floral, there are good freight elevators and there are bad freight elevators. And you learn so much about venues from a different perspective when you're having to load flowers to and from, and you know, roll them in and out and cart them.
And if you don't know, if you are in a city and you don't know what the logistics of load in and load out look like, ask somebody, go do a little site visit.
I would recommend a walkthrough. I absolutely recommend, to use a kind of an actor term, blocking it out, like making a plan of okay, so here's that ramp. So we can, you know,
make
because
a game
ramps,
plan.
because a ramp situation is different than a stair situation. You know, so with one, you can just push a cart. With others, you have to have maybe an extra person to carry up and down stairs. So yeah, absolutely. Knowing your venue in and out from the backside where load in happens is you have to. That's just part of prep work for any event, I would say.
Exactly. Well, I feel like this is a great transition to what do you need at the event to overcome some obstacles.
All right.
We have a little show and tell.
Let's take a look at
And if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can kind of look at our Floral toolbox and come watch it.
So that toolbox goes everywhere. Everywhere we go. If there is a flower involved, the toolbox is there. Every good florist I know has one, maybe even two toolboxes, depending on how big.
We used to have two toolboxes before the pandemic happened, and then we just kind of combined it all.
It's very full
one.
Right
it's
now.
Very full. It's very, very full. But we're going to kind of talk through what do we have in our toolkit. And you might want to take some notes if you are watching this or listening to it, because you might want some similar things. A lot of the things in here you can find at your local hardware store, either like Home Depot, Lowe's, Harbor Freight, things like that. But you're also going to want to have some actual floral supplies. Floral Supply Syndicate is our favorite. And if you don't have a Floral Supply Syndicate in your city, you can order and they can ship it to you.
Yes. Yeah. They're absolutely the best. And they've got locations spread all over the U.S. And they have the best prices and the most availability of really good, high quality floral tools that you really need.
Your wholesalers also might have some of these products as well. So definitely check with your wholesalers. Check with Floral Supply Syndicate. Jamali Garden is a great place to order from as well.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many different places. Just a simple Google search, floral supplies or something would be good. All right, so let's get into our toolbox. In our top of our toolbox, we typically have business cards in here. We need to add business cards to that.
Noted.
People ask all the time. All right, so on the very top of this, we have some floral tape, and we've got two different types of floral tape.
So
let's talk about the difference between those two types.
So for the screen, there's a tape that's like kind of stretchy and not super sticky. It adheses to itself, and it's really good if you break a stem, or if you and you can use it to patch it up. You can also easily put a couple of stems together with this, and it's not quite so heavy duty. We use this to make boutonnieres or any kind of small little dainty things, and it's really gentle tape, and it's just nice to have. It's just nice to have because it interacts well with actual flower stems, depending on what they are, especially more delicate ones like ranunculus or anemone.
The amount of ranunculus that we've had to wire and they break.
Yeah,
And this
learn
tape
how to
comes
wire
in.
ranunculus if you want to work with
It's incredible.
ranunculus, because this tape is wonderful. Anything with a hollow stem, you're going to want this tape around if you're working with it. And then we have some more heavy duty, and we've got 2 different widths here, but this is the thicker one, and it's this is by Oasis brand, and it is very sticky. It can hold flowers to a surface, and that's
kind of like duct tape for flowers.
It kind of is like duct tape for flowers. It is, you just don't leave home without it.
Right.
It's also really useful for creating mechanics. If you want to create, a certain, like a web of it, or, tape your Oasis down for whatever reason, it can get wet and still be sticky, which is also hugely important. So this stuff's great.
That's super important. And they come in multiple different widths. So we
and
have
colors.
And colors, yeah. It doesn't come like brown and black and green
and white and green.
White. Yeah. We typically have the green on hand because most stems are green. Definitely want this, but you also might want to have different colors as well, depending on what you do. But they come in a ton of different widths. So we typically keep this thinner width for sure for smaller things that we might need, and then the thicker width as well. So really important. Okay, what are these?
Why are they important? These are what we call tubes, which is not that fun a name for this cute little gizmo.
Super fancy.
These are floral tubes, and so they've got a little hole in the top, and so what you do is you fill them up with water, and if you have something that is really thirsty, like a hydrangea, especially outside, or a more delicate flower that just really can't be without water, but you are doing something either high up in an arrangement and the stem is too short to reach the water that you've provided, or you're doing something with chicken wire and you don't want it to be too heavy, so you don't want to use floral foam. These are also very green. They're reusable, and so if you're trying to get away from foam, they are a great solution. So you just put your stem down in there and make sure they're filled with cold water with flower food in it, and they will extend the longevity of your flowers in an event by quite a few hours.
Installations are probably the most common times that we use these, especially when your water source is further away from that stem.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then we have plenty of these knives, box cutters. You just never know when you need those.
X-Acto knife. Yep.
Yeah, lots of reasons for those. Rubber bands are always good to have on hand.
Very helpful. Sometimes just for your hair.
Sometimes just for your hair. That is absolutely correct. Little packets of floral food. So typically as a florist, you can get the big pails of flower food. But sometimes when you're out on an event and maybe you spill your water that had floral food in it, or maybe you're giving away some of those arrangements to people who attended the event, having little packets is a really good thing because they're easy to transport.
And people are always so thankful, especially if they're taking the flowers home. They're always happy to have a handful of those.
Yes. Okay, how about command strips?
Command strips forever.
We can't ever leave without command strips.
No, they come so in handy because many venues rightly have policies about the way that you can attach hardware to their walls. They don't want their paint damaged, and
rental companies as well. We have an acrylic huppa. We don't allow tape on there.
Yeah,
but command strips we will allow.
Yes, because they just come down clean, but they hold firm, and don't leave home without them.
Yeah. There's always a reason for a command strip.
There have been so many times where I've thought, we don't need anything like that for this. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'd really just like to be able to have a hook to get that thing to stay right where I want it.
Yes. Yeah. Remember the install we did over at On the Levee with the really colorful, we were attaching it to the bar and we were like, we need a command strip. The tape is not working. Like this floral tape that we were just talking about that you can attach things to. It wasn't holding. It wasn't working.
Yeah, because the surface was just too slick.
Right, right. So the command strip, we're like, but we have a command strip.
Yes, we do.
We can do that.
Yes, we do.
Paper towels, I think it's pretty obvious. You always need some paper towels.
Things get wet,
especially with flowers. You might even keep some Windex or some cleaning wipes in there as well.
Yes.
Just in case you make a little mess. Sometimes foam can get messy. Of course, we as florists try to be as green as possible. but sometimes you do have to use foam for certain installations or different reasons. And so foam can sometimes get real messy. And especially if you have a cocktail table or something that you're putting it on, having some paper towels and some cleaning stuff nearby is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
How about our floral?
Yay, the floral strippers. So I just love that you didn't even know about these tools until I came on board. This is hilarious. Yeah, these are great. So what you do is if you have something that's really thorny or has kind of a thick stem and you're just trying to even like take the leaves off faster, there's like a little metal hook here at this top, and you just clamp it on the top of your flower and then pull down, and it will take the thorns off. So you can then use that, especially for roses, those thorns are real and they hurt badly and they will cut you.
You and I have both had bloody hands just from some of do you remember those garden roses we bought?
Garden roses are so beautiful. And
they're so beautiful. They're so thorny though.
I actually sat up a couple of weekends ago. I actually sat up after, like, even with these, and I had little bits of thorn.
Oh gosh.
And so I had to get out a flashlight, like held the flashlight in my mouth and like had to like get the tweezers and I know, again, forcing hard on your hands.
Yes.
These will save you a lot of time and a lot of Band-Aids.
Yeah, definitely. And even if you don't use floral strippers like I didn't, and you just use a knife or you just use maybe those flexible ones that we have in the other room, having multiple types of floral strippers on hand for your freelancers to use is really important, because there's going to be times that somebody uses a knife and not a floral stripper, and you want to have those available for those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trash bags, super important. We have the mindset that we don't want to have to ask anybody for anything.
Yes.
We want to be able to provide our own stuff and not go running to the venue and be like, hey, do you guys have a trash bag? We made a mess.
Yeah, so brooms, trash bags, dustpans.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit in the box, obviously, but we bring all of that stuff with us.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely think about what you're doing, what you're setting up, where you're going to kind of know that. If you have a venue that is all carpet, we'll bring a vacuum with us or a handheld vacuum with us.
Yep.
So making sure we kind of understand that.
Yeah.
What about this guy?
Finishing touch.
It's
love that stuff. It rehydrates the actual, you just spray it on the top of your flowers right before you set them or when you finished fiddling with them, and it will just bring a little life into the actual top of the flower bloom that everybody's seeing. A lot of the work of a florist is actually not the part people see. I'm just thinking about this now. It's not the part people see. It's like down in the water. It's like down. It's like down, and then and you're building your mechanics, and then all of a sudden, it's like you see these flowers, and it's like, oh yeah, I got to deal with these blooms also. Right. So finishing touch, and it's just great insurance.
Yeah.
It's so good to carry around just to give like an extra spritz of hydration to the actual petals that you're working with. Sometimes
it's kind of like flower food for the petals, whereas flower food we typically put on the stems on the very bottom. Right. So this just kind of finishes it off. Finishing touch.
And flowers get bumped when you're transporting them too, and I feel like it kind of heals them a little bit as well.
It's like magic dust for
petals are delicate, and so never leave home without it.
Yes. Okay, so this is the next thing that we have. It's boutonniere pins. I have a story about these.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Okay. So when I first started doing floral, I had my brother was in high school, and he and 12 of his friends were all going to prom together. And so I decided, hey, I'll do all of your flowers. Try to get some experience, get some portfolio, did bouquets and boutonnieres for all of them. Oh. It was also a weekend that I had a wedding as well. It was kind of a trade. There was somebody who was coming in town who was a florist from New York. Her sister was getting married, so she was kind of leading it, but she wanted me to help her, and it was kind of a strange situation. But I think I had my dad or like someone on my family was delivering all of these to the prom people, because that was in Frisco. This event was all the way out in like Forney.
Oh gosh.
Which if you're familiar with the Dallas Metroplex is like 2 hours from each other.
It's very far.
And so I was on site. Somebody else was delivering all of those to all the houses in Frisco. And I had everything prepped. Everything. I had the ribbon that was on the bouquets. I had the boutonnieres that were pretty and packaged and ready to go.
Oh no.
I forgot boutonniere pins.
Oh, so they had no idea.
So I start getting calls while I'm on site doing wedding stuff from the mom saying, hey, everything looks beautiful. It's great. But where are those boutonniere pins? And I was like, oh, crap.
Oh, no.
I forgot boutonniere pins. And if you're a florist, you probably have been in a similar situation, whether it's your boutonniere pins or something else in your toolbox.
It's the kind of stuff that I literally will have a bad dream about sometimes.
Yes.
Like that's like florist stress dream is showing up and your toolbox not having what you need in it.
Right. Well, this happened to me. And so I had to have somebody else in my family. I was like, will you go back to all of those events or all of those houses, go to Hobby Lobby and go buy some boutonniere pins and go deliver all of them. All was fine. We figured it out. But
as you do, I would also say if you're going to be in events in any capacity, florist or no, be good on your feet.
Yep.
Be good at brainstorming. Problem solving.
Yes. So I was like, I know that Hobby Lobby has them. And if Hobby Lobby doesn't have them, Walmart will, and they're open 24/7. So kind of knowing where you can get something in the back end if you absolutely need it.
Yes.
If you don't have this floral tape and you need it for an event, go grab some duct tape if you need it. Like, something will happen. Something will work. So boutonniere pins, don't be like me and forget to get them.
Yay, zip
good
ties!
Old world of zip ties.
Zip ties. So very much like command hooks, zip ties will help you get things attached to columns or
so many different things.
I can't even list the uses of zip ties, and they're strong and you just
remember
snip
that
them at the end.
Green ceiling floral design that we did also at On the Levee?
Yes, yeah.
I would probably get how many zip ties do you think we used?
Oh, that thing was big.
Probably thousands.
Yeah.
At least high hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah,
so many
because we were zipping the actual Smilax too. Yeah.
So many different reasons for zip ties. Again, you can get these at Home Depot, Lowe's.
You can get them in all different sizes,
different colors, different thicknesses, different weights. Weight is also a really big factor in your zip ties.
Yes, it is.
You do need to kind of figure out how heavy something's going to be in order to get the right zip tie. Because if you have a thin little zip tie like this, but you have something that's hundreds of pounds that you are installing somewhere
to the ceiling,
this will snap.
Yes,
it will snap quick.
Oh gosh,
the liability.
That's another thing. That's another thing that gives florists
stressing
bad dreams. Is the idea of any kind of ceiling installation falling.
Yes.
I would say another big misconception that people who don't work in flowers have is that, and it's happened to me when I've handed a bouquet to a bride. She says, "Oh, these are heavy. Flowers are heavy. They're full of water."
Flowers are heavy.
Flowers are heavier than you think they are. Always assume that it's going to be heavier than you.
Always assume like 10 to 20 pounds if it's something small, and like 50 to 60 pounds if it's something big. Over assume the weight of something.
Yes, I agree with that advice completely.
Yeah. Unless it's dried, it's probably going to be pretty light, but
because the water's gone.
Water's
heavy.
Water is heavy. Okay, we were talking earlier about ranunculus and having to wire ranunculus. There's so many reasons why we need to wire something, whether it's an install or an actual flower. Green wire like this, which you might not be able to see in the video, but green wire like this comes in multiple different gauges.
Yep.
So you got it all the way to like super thin, like a wire thin.
Very thin. Yeah.
all the way to something thick. And so knowing the thickness of your stem is going to come in really handy with this, but also just the length of it, kneading it. So we wire ranunculus.
Yep.
Almost all ranunculus.
We wire almost all of our ranunculus, and I've gotten to where I've started wiring anemones as well. Anything with a hollow stem.
Or real paper thin.
Or a very delicate stem, you're going to want to be able to wire it because they snap easily, or they can just bend with the weight of the actual flower in time.
Yeah, the head of the flower can be too heavy. Yeah.
Yep.
So having that, I think we use 22 gauge most of the time.
I think that's right.
I think we're 20 or 22 gauge most of the time, but also just knowing what are you going to be ordering and what gauge of wire do you need. Sometimes if you don't live, like we are 5 minutes from Full Supply Syndicate.
We are really, really fortunate to be right by a Full Supply Syndicate location.
Yeah. But if you are in a smaller town, or if you're not near a floral supply store, you might just get a whole bunch of some different wires or different types of widths of things, just in case. You never know.
I would say don't be afraid to experiment either.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that wire is some of these things you're not going to find at a wholesaler, but wire and tape you usually can.
Mm-hmm.
So feel it out for yourself. See what you like.
Yeah.
This is the gauge of wire that I enjoy working with as well. And I didn't even know about this until I started working with you.
Really?
So, yeah. You always learn something new.
Mm-hmm. We have some random stuff in here, like our lint rollers. You never know. If you're installing over carpet, or if you're installing on a chair or near a chair and you've got pampas grass, for example, a lint roller is going to be super important to have.
Yes.
It's just going to get all
petals,
that crap. Yeah. We were talking about wire. We've got paddle wire as well. Multiple different reasons why we need paddle wire.
Yeah. It's just, you can just get really long strips of it and
not great for wiring stems, but wiring really anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really good. Always having some snips on hand is really important. There's so many different types of snips.
Yeah, and it's funny. Again, that's another thing where if you're starting out in this, just find a few different kinds of pairs and see what you like. Because some people like more of a scissor style. Some people like spring-loaded.
This was my very first pair of snips.
Oh my gosh. Does it just live in there?
And now I think it's rusty.
It's a little rusty. I can actually fix that.
Okay. Well, Beth can fix anything after the podcast episode.
Yeah, not right now.
My very first pair of snips I bought from Home Depot. Like, you literally can buy them anywhere.
Yeah, just garden clippers.
Yeah, garden clippers, shears, so many different words for it. I don't know why we have a stapler in here. I'm sure there's a good story why we have a stapler.
I'm sure we had it for something.
Who knows? Pens, markers, things like that is really important to have as well. You never know when you need to write on something, whether you're leaving it for someone for later to install for you. It's just always good to have.
Yep.
Door stops are really important to have. I can't tell you how many venues we've been to where you're like, that position where you're simultaneously using your behind to keep the door open as you're like rolling a cart across the thing.
I like that we just both were able to do this interpretive dance. Yes.
We're like doing the matrix to try to get something in the door.
Yes.
This little sucker can be so helpful.
So useful. That's another tool I didn't ever travel with until I started working with you, and now I'm so thankful.
So needed. I didn't start having this until probably 5 years into business, and I ended up going to a venue up in Denton.
Okay.
And they didn't have door stops, and they didn't have rocks nearby to like door stop it or anything, and they had a little lip on the door.
No.
And I was like, how the heck am I supposed to get this over the lip? Yeah. Door stop will always come in. Very handy. Lighters are really important to have, especially if you're the one that's doing candles. But even if you're not, just being a helpful hand for anyone else on site is super important.
I don't like leaving without a lighter.
We don't use these very often here in Texas, but hot hands during the winter time, or if you're in a area that is a little bit colder, you never know when your little fingers might need a little hot hands, a little warmth.
Well, and again, flowers like cold.
Yeah.
They thrive.
So naturally, your fingers are going to be cold.
They thrive in colder climates than we do.
Right.
At least as Texans.
All right. I think that's everything that is in here. Can you think of anything else?
That feels like the travel essentials to me.
These are the essentials. There's obviously going to be other times where you might need extra things depending on the install that you're doing, depending, sometimes a tarp is necessary to help with cleanup later on, broom and dustpan, little vacuums.
Absolutely.
Those are really important. So it just kind of depends on what you're doing. It's going to depend on what you need for the event. Would you agree?
And I would say anything that, like you said, where you don't have to ask anyone or have to ask people for as little as possible. And just being a team player, wherever you go, it helps with your reputation. And one way of growing your business well is to be a preferred vendor for spaces. And and they will recommend you if they, if you work well with them and are respectful of their space. And that's a great way of doing it is by bringing your own cleaning supplies and showing that you care, that it looks as great as they do.
Right, exactly. I can't tell you how many times as a rental professional, before we started doing floral, that the floors had tape or the floors had something that I was like, oh crap, I need that. Like a chair like this, for example, a lounge chair, the bottom has this net underneath that kind of helps. It's called a dust cover. And there's been plenty of times where it's been transported over and over and over again, and the bottom might have a little tear in it or something, which really doesn't matter. It doesn't compromise the furniture at all. But there's been times I've been like, oh, the florist probably has some tape. Maybe I can borrow some of their tape and tape that up real quick.
Yeah.
Because nobody sees it. And so being someone who's a team player, not only for your own team, but everybody else who's setting up is really important.
And you hear horror stories about florists doing things like putting floral foam directly on a wood table and things.
As a rental professional, that makes my heart palpitate.
And as a fellow florist, that gives me anxiety because I would like that's not the standard of professionalism that we aim for in this industry. So yeah, making sure that you're taking care of things that aren't yours.
Yeah. We mentioned floral buckets that have a whole bunch of water in them. That's something that it's commonly used, especially in the summertime, especially here in Texas. So many different things that you can really get.
Yeah.
And need.
Yep.
Let's talk pricing for a minute. Pricing is a fun game that we all try to play.
Yep.
In this industry.
And you have I mean, when I was doing Bonnie Blooms, I had my own theories of pricing and numbers that I tried to stay within, but I've been working in the background and have been doing pricing for purchasing of flowers wholesale for a while. What is it like educating clients right now in terms of pricing?
I mean, you definitely want to look at your area and what your city or your state is charging, because it's going to be fluctuating between so many different areas. But you also want to see what your pricing when you go to buy the flowers are. Right now, here in pre-summer of 2021, flowers are costing a lot more than they were a year ago or 5 years ago. And so pricing that we had 5 years ago versus today, it's going to be a little bit more expensive because the pricing of product right now is, one, very sparse, and two, it's a lot higher.
Well, we're coping in the industry, we're coping with, and this is again the kind of thing you don't think about until you become a florist or a professional, is so the pandemic hit, and so people weren't able to go to work all over the world, and so thousands and thousands and thousands of flowers died on the stem. The fields became in disarray, and so a year later, as people are starting to be able to go back to work and things are opening up, all the planting season and the growing season for an entire year was missed. And so, but for a lot of flower
think
farmers,
about your own gardens at your house. Think about the bushes in your front yard or your backyard or your side yard. We have, most people have some sort of a plant in their yard, right? They start as a seed, then they grow and they continue to grow and they continue to flourish. The same thing happens with flowers, obviously. So you have a ranunculus or a hydrangea or a rose or whatever. Well, when a whole year goes by and there's way less ordering, way less use, those farmers might be a little bit more cautious to start planting again.
Absolutely.
They also might not have the funds to do it because they just lost out on so much income. And so the season for planting was way a long time ago.
It was during 2020 when things were the worst. And so we are, so now,
So now that we need them, there's a shortage of them.
Yes. So that's a temporary problem that I think will be alleviated. But flowers in general, the cost is going up just like everything. There's inflation. There's inflation with everything.
Yeah. I know that we try to shoot between a 40 and 60% margin in our pricing. So we try to land closer to that 50% right in the between, but it kind of depends on the flowers that are being used and the seasonality of them. But we do try to shoot between a 40 and 60% pricing margin to where we are having some sort of a profit. We're not just breaking even on things.
And it's so important because, flowers are so beautiful and they do look so delicate and dainty. And we, again, I do think of myself when I'm on site as trying to be the good little flower elf, but it's a real business. It is a real business, and it pays our way,
Right.
like this is real work that we do, and we should be compensated for it. It was something that I really struggled when I started Bonnie Blooms was pricing correctly.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't price the way that I should have to account for my own time.
Right.
So now I conceived of Bonnie Blooms to pay myself kind of a salary that takes into account the work of planning, and not just the day, not just the 2 days that I'm maybe,
right.
working. Yeah.
Jeez, you scared me.
No, it's all right. Okay. What was I saying? Okay. I can just start over about, so we were talking, I was talking about, was it when I started talking about how I had trouble pricing correctly? And okay. Okay. So I would say when I first started Bonnie Blooms, one of the problems that I had was pricing correctly, because I wasn't taking into account not just the, handful of days that I was maybe doing the actual event, but all of that planning work and that time in the office and putting together concepts and communicating with the client and communicating with the wholesalers. It's a real job. It is a real job that requires a lot of skill. And if you were going to take on this work, you deserve to be paid for that.
Right. Well, and we just talked through the lugging of things and the supply boxes that we have to have and the buckets and the water and the space to design it in. All of that costs money.
Yes, it does.
We have to have those things to be able to do business. And at the end of the day, after our backs are hurting, after our feet are hurting, we're tired, we've been up early and out late, doing all these things, it has to be worth it for us, right? It does. We still have to be paid for this work that we're doing.
And that's how it should be.
Right. And flowers at the end of the day, they're a luxury thing.
They are a luxury good. And they can really make or break your event.
Right. Right.
I obviously believe they're worth it, or else I wouldn't be doing this work.
Right.
I actually truly do deeply believe in the power of excellent floral design to create a mood in a way that nothing else can.
Right. I mean, the ambiance from a fresh flower or a plant or something living just gives us so much clarity. There's actually proven things that say with plants in the same room or with floral in the same room, it improves the oxygen in the air. It improves the clarity that you have when you're in that room. There's sales tactics that go behind having floral or fresh plants in the room when you're in a sales meeting, because it does improve those things. And so the ambiance of being at a wedding, it's going to improve the mood in the room. It's going to make it look just gorgeous and very pretty.
It smells good too.
It does smell good.
Depending on your flowers.
That's true.
Yeah, there's just nothing lovelier.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
There's no substitute for a fresh flower. There just isn't.
Right.
There's nothing that says celebratory like flowers.
Right. And sure, you could go to the grocery store and you could buy your own flowers and make your own bouquet for your wedding and such. But the time and the stress and the tears and the bloody hands anything like that might not be worth it. And so pricing ourselves accordingly and up to the standard of a luxury product is going to be higher.
And I would say educating your clients about that.
Right. You don't want to scare them.
Gently.
Right. You don't want to scare them into anything. But they do need to understand, hey, why does this arrangement cost so much? Or why does this bouquet cost so much? I mean, the flowers, you could go get that at, Tom Thumb or Kroger for $50. Why does it cost me $300 for this bouquet?
Right. Right. And there is definitely an education piece. And I can see where if you don't work in this industry, it is confusing. Right. I if I hadn't been raised the way that I was, and around flowers my whole life, I would probably think the exact same thing.
Right.
But you're paying for labor, expertise, again, labor, manual labor, huge amounts of knowledge
Right.
that go into creating something beautiful that lasts, that looks perfect, that hopefully,
Right.
looks great in photos for years to come.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the last thing that we'll talk about is having good relationships with your suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
Having good relationships with the people that are providing the flowers or providing the supplies or providing the things that make your job even worthwhile.
Yeah. In this industry, in every line of work, but in this industry in particular, it just really pays to be overly kind if possible. And the thing about wholesalers is they really can make or break you. If you have a good relationship with a wholesaler, they will hold flowers for you if they think you're going to come pick them up. Like, they will invest in you
Mm-hmm.
and they will think about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been, known to maybe like get an extra bunch of something for free sometimes. Yep. They will bend over backwards to get you exactly what you ask for. Yep. If they like you and you like them. Right. So I would say,
then they take interest in your life too. Mm-hmm. I know our wholesaler Michelle over at Agro, she knows my kids by name. They've come up with me to Agro a couple times, and she asks about them. Anytime I go into Agro, she's like, how's Brody and Briley? And I'm like, they're great. They're kicking along and they're going.
She asked about how my dad was doing, and she asked about school with me as well. She's wonderful.
Right.
Everybody deserves a Michelle.
Yeah.
We need to send this to her.
We do. We need to send a little thing over to Michelle.
But we have several wholesalers in town who really do wonderful things.
Yes.
That help the business thrive. So yeah, I would say having a good relationship with your wholesaler,
mm-hmm.
fostering that, and being kind when they aren't able to get exactly what you want. And
they're working just as hard as we are to get the product that we need. There's, mm-hmm. as we all know, there's Smilax shortage right now.
Yep.
Every week I see on the Facebook group, people are asking for Smilax.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
And so when our wholesalers maybe can't come through with something not because of them, but because of backup at the farmers or backup at the airports or backup wherever they're trying to source things from, they're doing their best. And it doesn't do any good to chew them out or get mad at them or anything like that.
It really doesn't. And it doesn't benefit them for them to supply product that we won't buy.
Right.
Right. So
exactly.
Yeah, they're
trying to anticipate what's happening, what might be coming up.
They have to do so much trend forecasting that we don't even have to think about on this side. They work so hard, and sometimes they get to work at 3:34 in the morning in busy seasons.
Yeah, which is why they close at 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Yes, that's another thing. If you go into this industry, become a morning person if you can.
Yes.
You're going to do a lot of your interactions early in the morning.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Get a coffee maker.
Get a coffee maker at your office or wherever you're at.
Or wherever you are, and just keep it flowing and don't worry about it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, to end this episode, I would love to know what your favorite event, floral-wise, you've done, either for us or for somebody else.
Yeah, I was thinking about the LinkedIn project that we were talking about. So the one with the hydrangeas and the buckets.
Multiple events within this LinkedIn thing.
There were multiple events. This one in particular
was 9 events within that one event.
It was such a week.
It was weak.
It was a week. But this event in particular was an Alice in Wonderland themed outdoor garden party.
Mm-hmm.
And Cam came up with this incredible look of this double arch as you walked into this garden. And so what was fascinating to me about it was you hear red roses and baby's breath and you think, oh my gosh, like how 1950s can you get?
Right.
Like the tackiest combination possible, if you're in this industry for any length of time. But Cam, you just completely reimagined what baby's breath and red roses could do. So again, this was all your concept, and it was hundreds of red roses, and oh my gosh.
I think it was 500. I don't know how I remember this. It was 500 red roses.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It was 250 white hydrangeas.
Yeah.
And thousands of stems of baby's breath.
I mean,
Probably
I think we
2,000.
got like 50 bunches or something.
No, we got like 100 bunches.
Yeah, I remember the
100 or
entire
150
studio
bunches.
I remember the entire studio was just
a sea.
It
was like clouds everywhere.
And we built these arches to be full of baby's breath with just these little red roses, and it was the perfect, Alice, it looked like we'd gone through the looking glass. It was so cool. And it was fun. And it, and everything.
You got to meet the Jonas Brothers even.
You did. The rest of us just were dirty and like loitered in the hallway.
I have thoughts about that, but
sorry. We were such a mess.
It was great. But then, do you remember my other, I would say my favorite one is the second half to that Alice in Wonderland up on the terrace. Do you remember we did those, they weren't globes, they were clutches or something.
They're almost like a terrarium looking thing.
But not the geometric terrarium. It was like a glass
top with a
wooden bottom. Yeah, it was like this, like what you would see in Alice in Wonderland or like Beauty and the Beast type of thing.
It was like the Beauty and the Beast rose little thing.
Yes. And so we put old books, these vintage books stacked up, and we used green moss to kind of create this bed of green moss. And then we used, I can't even remember. We used like the French tulips and some roses and a whole bunch of different flowers I can't even remember the names of because they were so
some of them were unique. We used varieties that I have never seen again.
And then we put that big glass thing on top of it and it just was so cool. And it was a hot day, and so they kind of started steaming a little bit, which only added the magical effect to it. That was probably my favorite thing to design. Not only, and Kaylee knows this, I like the challenges on events. Yeah. I love a good challenge and overcoming it. Maybe that's just the Enneagram 3 in me. But what I loved about it was such a unique look. Yeah. And there was a challenge to get it to stay alive for that event.
Yeah.
Like, how do we make this books with moss and these flowers that require water inside of this heat box, essentially, on top of it? How do we make it last for a few hours? And I just thought it was so cool. And it lasted.
It was beautiful. That whole event, all of the LinkedIn was so cool. I mean, and it has always impressed me how much you were able to conceive of, plan through, organize us for. That was my first event to work with you.
Was it really?
It was. And you had I remember coming in and you said, okay, these are going to go for this. I know. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And you just said, these are going to go with this, these are going to go with this, and I want you to do this, and I want you to do this. And I said, great. I know, very, very.
I think we had 5 or 6 freelancers every single day. I think it was like Friday to Friday, a whole week. We did 159. I don't know how I remember this. 159 arrangements. 5 big installs, or 4 or 5 big installs.
Big installs,
and I'm sure a whole bunch of extra.
And the
things.
balloon arch.
That's right. And it was different themes. So LinkedIn wanted these different themes. They had
and it was all over the
farm
city.
to table. Yeah, it was farm to table dinner. It was many arrangements for the actual convention center.
Yes.
That went missing. Do you remember that?
Oh my gosh.
Sitting in the van.
Here's another thing about being,
you're
going to have a floral business. You're going to get attached to the containers that you use because they can be a little expensive.
And beautiful.
And they're beautiful, and we want them back. And sometimes you have to be, I'm an Enneagram 2, so this does not come naturally to me, but sometimes you just have to say, you can't have that.
Yeah.
That isn't for you. And deal with some sad faces. But in this case,
sometimes you have to go on a wild goose chase.
In this case, we didn't even have the opportunity to say, you can't do that because workers had just stolen them and taken them, and we had to get them back.
It was fun, though. I just remember it was the end of the week. We had done so much.
I just remember my whole body hurt.
Yes. You, me, Raven, and my mom sitting on the concrete ground at the Dallas Convention Center, just like sitting there thinking, wow, we just did all of that.
We just did so much. I also remember just being really hungry. That is another thing I take. I take snacks with me.
Yes.
Wherever I go. Not every florist does. Some florists, they get so in the zone that they won't eat all day. And sometimes I can be that way, but if I'm sometimes when you leave the studio, you think you're going to be gone for 5 hours and then things happen and you're gone for 12.
Yeah.
Just have a granola bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say add that to your toolkit.
Yeah.
Some granola bars that don't perish.
Yes.
That also can get wet and not ruin.
Yeah. Just some goldfish crackers or something.
Yes.
Just something to keep your blood sugar up.
Yeah.
Because you can get faint.
Yeah.
You know, you really can. Hydration also.
Yes. There was an event. I had just done it on my own. It was up at the Jewel at the Terrace where it was hot. And it was just me doing the floral, and my rental team was there as well, setting up other stuff. And I just remember standing up there putting these, I think I had like peonies and roses and like all this stuff on this install. And I went into that, like one of those fogs that you get into when you're so hot, you're so hungry, you're so thirsty. And I mentioned over to my guys, I was like, guys, I need you to go get me something. Yeah. Like, go to the coffee shop downstairs. I need you to get me something because I'm about ready to faint. Yeah. I said, I just need to take a breath. I just need to sit down. Like, being in tune with your body, because we are using our bodies a ton. Yes. It's super important. Hydration. I remember in that LinkedIn, when we were doing again, this is so Enneagram too, when y'all were up on the ladder, I'd say, 10 minutes, water break, take a sip of water. Yes. You were momming us. I was momming you from down below, handing you things and having to have water. Yeah. It was hot that day. It was hot. We were on the ladders. And you forget. In all black. Black. I know. And you forget. So those are, you forget. You forget. And it's hard. Yeah. There have been days where like my lips will crack and stuff because I'll just get so dehydrated. Yeah. So you and my mom were the Enneagram 2s, and me and Raven were the Enneagram 3s on that install. So Raven and I were up there just like plucking things everywhere we could, and you guys were like, remember to drink your water. Do you need a granola bar? And we're like, nope, we're just going. We just got to get done. We just don't want you to fall off that really tall ladder onto this concrete because it's like 100 degrees and your arms have been above your head for 2 hours now. Yeah. Gosh, we got it done though. We did. I swear we do more events than just the LinkedIn event. We do so many. That was the biggest one. It was the first one that I worked with you, and so that I guess like in this podcast is talking first impressions, which was, and what a first impression it was because it was so big. And hey, it didn't kill you. You're still here. It didn't kill either of us. Here. Cheers to that. Cheers to that. Oh. All right. Well, this has been a great episode all about the foundations for a floral business and the things that you need to know going into owning your own floral business, being a freelancer. Even if you're just a freelancer, listening to this episode would be really great because you'll just have kind of a heads up on what might happen. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, y'all.